you could, in an hour, with access to a product marketer, just being able to look at your product, come up with like 2 years worth of lifecycle work to do. The math just checks out for an evergreen program. AI especially has been very interesting to me, and Just Words itself has kind of changed my instincts.
The most overrated buzzword in AI marketing right now.
ChatGPT to me is relatively useless because by the time I am done typing in the context it needs into the box, I've written the thing I need to write.
When you interview a candidate, what differentiates a good strategist? Hi, everyone. Welcome to our AI Marketer podcast. You're listening to Just AI, the podcast for lifecycle marketers using AI to move faster, smarter, and better. I'm Neha, and today we're joined by Nick Harmon, who's the Senior Director of Lifecycle and Marketing Analytics at Handshake. Nick brings a decade of growth experience from Earnest and Crunchbase as well. Welcome, Nick. Very, very glad to have you here.
Excited to be here.
Yeah, and I want to get into it right away. Tell us a little bit about your story. Like, what does lifecycle mean, and Handshake? What have you seen evolve in this space?
Sure. I've always been at like SaaS companies, mostly, and usually ones that are freemium based or have some other, I'd say, sort of like interesting aspect to them. So lifecycle has always been a pretty critical or important lever, whether that's, I think, what we more traditionally think of as lifecycle, like email or push or SMS, or even I think of in the product or on the site as lifecycle as well. It's the same thought process. Like you have a user or a visitor at a certain state. What do you want to see? What do you want to show them? That should tie in with what your emails say. So have always been at companies where that has been a really important lever. Was at Dropbox for a little bit, which is a very like classically freemium growth driven company. Handshake is also freemium on the employer side. So if you're trying to hire a student or someone in early talent, you can post that job for free and see the applicants you get. And then we offer different ways you can pay to upgrade. So the lifecycle side is obviously very important because once you've posted a job, we know you were high intent. We know you were actually trying to hire. And then we need to figure out a way to help you be successful in hiring. And if you're not being successful, figure out how to help you buy what you need to do that. So I've always, I guess, had the luxury of being in a place where lifecycle was more than just like a bonus. Places I've been, it's been like a critical part of the user journey and lever. And I think that has been fun and rewarding.
Yeah, and you've been in so many different places. Have you seen differences based on the industry or the kind of product, or more or less it's similar, whether it's a freemium product or not?
There's some similarities kind of everywhere. I think there are like basic stages of the life cycle you're always going to have. The first time somebody signs up, they don't know what you're doing. Like there's onboarding. You have your paywalls. If you're a freemium product, like when people reach those, how do you educate them on why they should buy to get more past the paywall? And then there's often, especially with a freemium business, there's an element of engagement. Your inactives are much less likely to all of a sudden swoop in out of the blue and buy something. So there's always this like, where do you draw the line and declare somebody an inactive, and how do you treat them differently when they haven't been back in a while? So I'd say there's always like sort of there's some commonalities across life cycle structures, but then also, the actual like what they're buying and why and what they're using and how they can use it totally varies, and with differing degrees of like activity. We expect a much higher degree of activity on Handshake, especially during like back to school season, career fair season from students. When employers have a job open, we expect them to be back a bunch. Whereas I used to work at Crunchbase, and in a lot of cases, if we had people who were founders like yourself who were using Crunchbase, they really only needed Crunchbase every now and then. And so we were much more sort of generous in allowing them to lapse. I was trying to convince them it'd be nice to have those insights year round, but generally we'd be like, hey, if you needed that for your Series C and you don't need it anymore, I'm not gonna bother you. Like I'll be there for you when your Series D is ready.
Yeah. I'm just curious, what did lifecycle look like there then? Like you don't have a nurture retention kind of flow, right? Because like you're done with your initial, round, and now you're off to the races, and you'll come back when you need to. So how did you think about lifecycle there?
It was there. The lifecycle was very different based on the like persona or role they had. So in a lot of cases, like people love to, I think, segment super quickly into like, what role are you? What industry are you in? And in some cases, I think that's like window dressing. It's like we sell the same thing. When I was at Dropbox, it was like, we sell the same thing to everybody. Like yes, with some flavors, but like you're storing your files, you're sharing your files,
Yeah.
you're getting your files. It was that last 5 to 10% in like the click-through rate testing.
Mm.
Whereas at Crunchbase, knowing what industry you're in was very important, because if you were a salesperson, you were a true like SaaS user of Crunchbase. You paid for it day in and day out. We had salespeople who like put it on their personal cards because it was so important to them to prospect companies that like actually had budget to buy every day.
Right.
Whereas if you were a founder, you would be like our most power of power users for like 3 months straight, and then I would not hear from you. And so I would have a different life cycle based on what like industry you're in. So if your company's funnel varies significantly based on the industry, then it's worth segmenting that up top when you create your life cycle schemes. Whereas if like a Dropbox, it's window dressing, then and I'm sure the product marketers at Dropbox would be very unhappy with me saying that, but like from a like analytical and segmentation perspective, it wasn't as critical, whereas at Crunchbase it was.
Yeah, no, it makes total sense. Like, I think about that for e-commerce versus product-led companies too, where e-commerce, you're just selling a t-shirt, and you can, dress your email up as much as you'd like to sell the same t-shirt, right? Based on who you're selling it to, but the product is the same versus thinking about the product differently across companies. Okay, cool. So just actually doubling down on that idea, if you're going into a new company and you have to think about starting Lifecycle from scratch, right? How do you build those foundations? What are the first few things you want to think about?
I think just like way ahead of getting into super complicated like data modeling and like who's right for upsell, like you could probably in an hour with access to a product marketer, a product manager, and like just being able to look at your product, come up with like 2 years worth of life cycle work to do without like needing to get like really fancy. You've got a sign up. Do they know what they signed up for? Are they getting what they came in the door? Onboarding, right? Like there's a reason that people always talk about onboarding. There's a reason that when you interview a lifecycle marketer for a job and ask them to propose something, they're always going to propose onboarding. It's like, you kind of do need it. Now, granted, how much people actually read those emails versus a notification versus an in product, that's up for debate. But like someone learning how to use your product and get what they came in for is always going to be critical. You've got your paywalls or upgrade points if you're freemium, or if you're not freemium, maybe you have a free trial. So it's like trial expiration, educating people, trial win back. And then as mentioned before, there's the activity threshold. When someone hits inactivity, how might you're kind of no longer trying to shoot them straight into premium. You need to just like give them a little something to bring them back and then try again. So I'd say three immediate spots to start are like onboarding, paywalls, inactivity. And like you could honestly test those different paywalls forever and like probably do fine.
I love that. So there's a playbook for in 2 hours, build your roadmap for the next 2 years if you're just starting off.
Yeah, well, build this scheme for the first 2 years. The actual like ideas will take more time to think of, and they should. Like you should run something. If it doesn't work, you should change. But they're like I think you can always be confident that those are points where you'll want lifecycle communications, and those are also points where you want to think about your user state differently. So if you're making like a state machine, like a map of your users, you probably want to have like, if you monetize most often out of your active users, for example, you've got your active pool, and then you've got new users, and how many of them end up in the recurring active pool and fall out, how many are in the inactive phase, and then of your active users, how many of them are you upselling, how many are downgrading back into that pool. And then you might set sub goals for each of these areas. In onboarding, it's like adopt a feature that you see leads into the active pool more often. The active pool, it's like adopt new features or subscribe to this feature that sends you alerts. In the inactives, it's like just come back and log in. So you end up with like separate goals in each of these areas too. And those, if you structure it that way, those end up being durable. Whereas if you structure your goals too hard around like the latest feature or something, unless you're confident this is like a massive change or the bedrock of the experience you were selling, you're going to be reshaking your goals and refiguring out what works so often. But if you keep it to more of the basics, within each bucket, you can then test to see what feature is it that gets people into the active bucket. If they're inactive, what feature gets them to stick? But the North Star should be, I want my actives to remain active. And that's what you build first. And that you might need
You
some
don't have to
analytics
do.
to figure out what the thresholds are, but I don't need I don't need a random forest. I don't need a data mod. Like I want them to stay active. And like, that's what I'm going to try and do for the next year.
Yeah. So basically stay high level in building those, frameworks and building blocks like, hey, activating users is one of the goals. And then in that, there's like, I don't know, a million ideas to try. And that's okay. That's going to change and evolve over time versus having a goal on a feature launch, which is a one-off. And then what happens next? And you're like all scattered.
Totally. Yeah. Feature launches to me are always very interesting negotiations to have. I think sometimes if it's like a huge change to your product or something, that your user base has just been waiting for, then I think totally. When you're done building it, they're like, I want to hear about this as soon as it's out. Go tell everybody. But if that's not the case, just because that's when you and the company have finished building it, that's not the user's time. That's your time. Like, good for you. But like, I don't think this person needs to hear about this. Handshake has like all these feed features, for example, like students can come in, they can post about their projects to make themselves look more valuable to employers. They can learn from other students who are just like them. That's all very cool. But if you haven't finished your profile, I'm not necessarily super concerned with getting you to post on the feed.
Right.
And I think that just like, if we have finished a feed feature, the people who need to hear about that right now are probably the like 3% of our user base who are like epic users of the feed all the time. But if you're still in onboarding, I'm going to push back on announcing that via email to you, because my goal for you is to get you fully signed up. You don't need an email from me saying anything but, hey, you haven't set your job preferences yet, and I can't give you recommendations until you do. And that's what you should hear from us, and until that happens.
That's so interesting. I've seen companies just like sort of spray and pray a lot of times where it's like, yeah, we'll do feed recommendations and we'll do onboarding and profile completions and let's just go and see what works. And what you're saying is no, like let's think through that true user life cycle. Can they even
Totally.
value recommendation if their profile is not filled out?
Totally. And the flip side is like, not everyone needs to hear about it at launch, but also there's probably someone who does need to hear about it 10 months from now. They've signed up, they're fully onboarded, and they're like, okay, what do I do now? I want recommendations. They should get an email from us about the feed. And if we are so launch and one-off focused, we will have blasted everybody back in May. And this one person who's ready to hear about the feed now will not get an email. So instead of thinking about, I'm going to announce this to everybody, think about, when in the onboarding experience should someone learn about this and test this into that email? Is there a moment sort of in the general swirl of general activity? Because that area often tends to not have a lot of triggers in it. It's just people are kind of there, but they haven't hit a paywall yet. Is there a moment in there? Maybe it's they get their first follow, someone follows them, then we want to reach out to them. So think about making these evergreen moments where that way you are guaranteed to be announcing this very exciting feature to people on their own time.
Right.
And it's specific to the user as opposed to specific to us. Like, just because our Eng team had the time to do it this quarter doesn't mean that like someone needs to hear about it this quarter.
That's so true. Yeah. On that note, then, one, how do you even find out these moments? Like, what does that process look like today? And I can imagine this differs company to company, probably not a straightforward process. And then once you find these out, do you put that back into your strategy right away? Is that still an Eng or like a company prioritization question? How do you navigate that too?
It's a good question. I think that generally like growth marketing, product-led growth, freemium stuff, all the buzzwords, and lifecycle is very tied to actually having changes in the product. So I think once you've like built moderately effective lifecycle programs at like, 3 or 4 of the most critical points, and I include in product as part of lifecycle, once you've built that, like you're sort of dependent upon something new coming. And that's where you, as ideally a marketer in partnership with a product marketer, are working with a product manager to hear, what are we excited about that's going to be new and notably change the user experience, hopefully for the better.
Yeah.
And then how do I now build new things around that? You could probably go for months without getting anything new. And I definitely have at many points in my career, and like, you can totally optimize. There are people, you're probably not doing a good job explaining this to someone. There's probably old communications you could clear out. You could probably come up with some triggered moments if you really think about it. And also like that could be a time for one-offs if you are sort of waiting, you don't have any clear like tripwires in the product. Like you could be like, we're going to do a summer series to all of our actives to just try and get them onto the latest stuff while we're waiting for product to build things that will then make into evergreen programs in the fall. That's fine, but you're going to get diminishing returns selling the same stuff. If you want a big change in your business, you need a big change in the user experience, and that there's only so much you can do with email or notifications or in product. And like that's just a shortcoming of the industry is like ultimately like the biggest growth I'm going to get is sending a really basic email about a free trial that we didn't have before. And like
That's
I
so
can
true.
get super sophisticated and customized, but like I can send an email that's like 4 words. That's like free trial start now. And it's going to do better than like months of work refining the subject line of our onboarding email.
Right. That's so true. That's like the reality of what a company, like, yes, if the company is doing something massively different, Lifecycle can like squeeze the juice out of it quite a bit compared to if you're just repeating and changing your messaging over time. What can you do beyond a certain point? Nice. There's something else you said about when you interview a candidate, they'll always bring up things like onboarding and maybe win back, welcome series, whatnot. Um, how do you differentiate somebody who really understands strategy and structure and foundations versus not? Maybe through like it could be an interview question or something that you're looking for, or just generally like I'm curious what differentiates a good strategist from somebody who's just repeating a playbook.
See how thoughtful they are. So I've had someone that we were really excited to hire, and their recommendation was like an onboarding or welcome series or how to improve our onboarding and welcome series. They had some notes. It was like, played it super safe. Like I couldn't be like, wow, what an innovative person.
Right.
But they were like, they really laddered up into like, this is why I think we still have a lot of opportunity in the onboarding. This is why I would start here. And then during the presentation where they were sharing it, I could ask, well, why did you pick that? They're like, oh, interesting. Like, why not this? Or like,
Yeah.
what led you to recommend that? And half the time they were like, well, I did think through it and this is what I settled on. And half the time they were like, I'll be honest, I just had to pick something and I didn't really think about it, but I could. And that's a fine answer too, but to have someone who knows what they have thought about and haven't, and generally to have the important things be thought through, I think is just a really easy way to get to it. I honestly, like most people are very good at turning out something that looks good, but if you really dig in, it's kind of like, well, this is sort of the way I've always done it. And that's like, why do you think it has always worked? And in what cases might it not work? And if they can answer that question, you're like, great, that's cool. They're capable of thinking this through. And if not, it's like, there might still be a good candidate, but there could be better candidates who are just more in self-awareness of their own thought process. And if you can break down the thought process, you can learn anything and be taught anything and really succeed in any space.
Yeah. It's so funny. No matter whether it's marketing, product, engineering, it comes down to, can you really question your assumptions? Can you be curious? Can you think out of the box, right? The rest is all stuff that you can learn and, skills that you can gain over time. No, that's very insightful. Okay, let's switch into another concept that I think we've seen evolve in marketing, which is the idea of calendar-based marketing. These could be your one-offs, maybe it's product launches, maybe it's different seasons, whatnot. And that starting to go into sort of more evergreen automations. But what are your first thoughts when you think about those? And I'm curious if there's do you have a little bit of both at Handshake or in other companies? What does that look like?
I think the ideal probably certainly looks like a little bit of both. I know that I certainly, for a long time, have been a bit of like a purist about evergreen. The math just checks out for an evergreen program. It's like you're going to do all the work to send 3 emails and then never send them again. And then next month, you're going to do it again for the same amount of results. Maybe I was like, that can't be it. There are key opportunities and moments where a one-off series or just a one-off, just one email or whatever it is, a pop-up in the product by itself is the right thing to do. So ultimately the correct thing is a blend, and it's something I've been working toward. At Handshake, for example, back to school is a really big moment for our biggest hirers and obviously for students. They're coming back to school. They maybe were freshmen the first time they get access to Handshake. They ignored us. Now they're a junior and they're like, wow, I want an internship. And it's time to like get them set up. We have these triggered programs that go out when schools first like upload the students to us to help them set up their profiles. These opportunities like don't necessarily have an evergreen trigger associated with them. They have like an annual seasonal based trigger associated with them. Every year I need to speak to the freshman coming back. And in some ways that almost like makes them semi-evergreen in a way.
Yeah, because it's coming
You
back.
possibly could get away with sending the exact same email every year. You probably shouldn't. It will be better for you if you adapt it to the latest things that are happening, to learnings the previous year, but it's almost like annual evergreen. I think those are really powerful one-offs.
Yeah.
If you're always going to run a Black Friday thing, if you're always going to do this, then the A/B tests and things you run, they carry forward to next year. And also the team has a huge head start every year. So ideally you start with those one-offs that are going to be still repeatable one-offs.
Yeah.
And then you get into true opportunity-based one-offs, which is like something happens in the news, or you have launched something that you think is truly a game changer. And those are things where you should be sending some sort of one-off.
Yeah.
In
Makes sense.
that case though, I like to think that like, where do you send the one-off? In the like scheme we were talking about before, the sort of user segmentation scheme, where does a one-off belong? And if you're sitting down and looking at your sort of like flow chart of the user journey, there's like the interfaces between the states, and those are where your triggered programs are going to live. But then you're just like looking at this pool of like hopefully millions of actives and many more millions of inactives. And at some point you're like, they're not doing anything. I don't have a trigger for an email. And that audience is great for these seasonal campaigns, these one-offs, these launches. You're like, I haven't sent anything to 3/4 of my actives pool since they joined it. And I'm only sending to the commenters. So like 75% of these people haven't heard from me in months. And, my product manager comes to me and is like, I launched this new feature. I'm super excited. I'm like, great. Send it to my giant pool of mystery people that aren't doing anything. Obviously make sure the message is appropriate and it's good email, but like the one-offs can really fill in and help you harvest from people that you don't have a behavioral reason to go out to. So if you don't have a behavioral reason, then you start to come up with, did we launch something that is a reason? Is there something seasonally happening that is a reason? So it's still figuring out sort of the triggers, quote unquote, but they're going to be one-off triggers instead of like recurring ones that send every day.
It's not for a specific intention. Oh, buy something, or here's a trial. It's more for, hey, we did something and we're just sending out to everybody. So at least we exist, and maybe the time is right for you. Who knows? Which is of course not going to be as, as profitable in terms of what you're trying to gain from Lifecycle or as evergreen, but there's still value in that.
And you could also have like perpetual holdout groups. So if you're in that like group of actives, you just like slice off 10% of that group in whatever your sorting system is, iterable and whatever. And you're like, this is the holdout group. Everyone whose user ID ends in a 1 is not going to get emails for, I don't know, the foreseeable future.
Right.
And then you send your triggered emails, you send your one-off emails. You could even not have the holdout group for the triggered emails if you just want to measure the one-offs, but you keep that perpetual holdout group, and you're not going to get like super great stat sig. It's not going to be like award-winning statistics, but the idea being that you gain some way to see if those things that you don't have an immediate behavior for eventually drive engagement. And you might find that like sending 12 like an email a month over the course of the year actually did on average make these people more likely to buy the next year or something.
It's funny, when we just started our initial email marketing program, and we're like, why are we even sending emails? We're too small. And then at least 3 people reached out. So people that are reading these emails.
It's like a display ad inventory at this point. Everyone's inbox is such a mess, and it's just like hundreds and hundreds of emails. And like most people are not good at cleaning it out and unsubscribing. So it's just like shouting into a void. And the thing that people look for is an email that has to do with something that they're expecting. Like a Dropbox, for example, we had an obscene click-through rate on emails that were like related to sharing. Where there was obviously the one that was like a person shared something with you. Obviously those had really high click-through rates, but even just in general, like the newsletters, tips on how to do that, people are waiting for that because they know they signed up for us for that. And that is something that matters to them. And so those emails still like cut through at an obscene rate if you find something that people are truly wanting. It's the emails out of the blue that I think it's really hard nowadays to convince or educate somebody in the email format, because people are checking email in a passing way, in very, very infrequently. So it's more like, how can you use email to move upon intent or desire that people have already expressed in the product and their usage? and get them back, and then do that education in the product when they're now in the mind space. You send someone like a 3-paragraph email, it's probably not going to do it unless they have signed up for long form content on a topic, and then fire away, send it to them.
That's also very smart. Yeah, let's give some love to the evergreen emails as well. So I love what you said about, so you had an engineering take on it, which was interesting. It's like, hey, the math only makes sense that you keep sending and keep evolving over time. Um, can you think of examples where evergreen programs are really compounded in terms of their results and effects they show over time?
Yeah, sometimes they're within the same space, so to speak, same phase of user life cycles. Let's say these are the people we think are ready to upgrade. We're going to make a bunch of programs to get them to upgrade. Sometimes you stack a bunch of programs to different audiences, but to the same outcome, and you stack results. And then sometimes you're compounding across life cycle schemes. So I can give you examples of both. In the same scheme, we had these like active users of Dropbox, but they're using the free product. But if you looked at their email domain, they were at businesses. And so the question was like, there is a certain huge group of people here who like probably would be interested in this. And we could just send them all like an email. In this case, it was like people who had more than 5 people on the same email domain. So it was presumably a team of people at a company. If you reached out and specifically referenced that, and we're like, there's a bunch of you using this. We have something that makes it easier for a bunch of you to use this. Do you want to talk to somebody? That worked. That one worked with that group. And so you make that into a triggered program. You have to look for wait until a group of people adds their 5th person and send the email. Now it's evergreen. You set that on. They're like, okay, what else do we have in here? We have a consumer paid product, but it's being used by people on a business domain. We're like, why don't buy the consumer one, buy the business one. So we would wait until people on a business domain would purchase the consumer one, hit them up and be like, there's maybe some better options for you. Do you want to talk to someone about it? Bingo, that one worked as well. Great. Now the old one is producing like 10 leads a week. The new one is now producing 20 leads a week. And now that's 30 leads a week. And the person who built both those emails go on vacation and they're still turning out 30 leads a week.
Nice.
And so you keep finding these moments, and that it builds this compounding curve, as opposed to like running a big seasonal lead gen campaign that harvests maybe some of those people just through like sheer force of will. And then next quarter, you just have to do it again and you produce the same amount of results. That one-off campaign might outperform the 2 programs that first quarter. But the next quarter, while you're still building your campaign, those programs are harvesting. And someone's also probably going to build another successful program or 2. And now you've just gotten 30 leads a week times the 13 weeks of that quarter plus 40 to 50 leads a week the last couple of weeks of that quarter because they built something else. And pretty soon your evergreen lead gen engine is just like storming away and fielding half of the sales team's pipeline.
Nice. So that's a great example. You're putting all your energy, bringing all your team in getting that through. A good segue there now to think about what is the role of AI in all of this, right? And I think something you said was very powerful, which is, hey, figure out which segments make sense. Instead of sending the same business product to every free user, we found out that if you have, 4 people in your team, it's the right time to send you the 5th one and so on, right? Tell me a little bit more about how do you think technology can come in to make the life cycle smarter?
It's been, AI especially has been very interesting to me, and like Just Words itself has kind of changed how I have to think of this and changed my instincts. Because I think up until it was possible to like send like 10 different emails to a group based on which one of 10 categories they were in, the best way to go about prioritizing what you spent your time on was to, as we talked about earlier, think about the like big changes coming and just like build around those and keep going. And then if you're sort of like in a dry spell between big changes, you can start to get a little more specific. But if someone is proposing an idea to you that is like not tapping in or building something new to a significantly large portion of your user base, or isn't like a notable change to your main most significant program right now, you can kind of pretty quickly rule it out. And a lot of things that used to surface that I would like, that a more seasoned lifecycle professional would deprioritize and say no to would be like hyper-personalization. People talk about it all the time. I think people like in the 2010s, it was such a big thing. But like, I know very few instances of like hyper-personalization being worth the time besides being really cool. It is in like a product generated way, but in just like a general like onboarding email, it's usually not worth it. Because what would happen is someone would be like, I want to test like personalizing this by industry. And I'd be like, great, we're already emailing everyone anyway. So then you have to go in and you have to run like 5 or 6 different tests of like, okay, the civil engineering firms are going to get this, and then the electrical engineering firms are going to get this.
Yeah.
And like, that is like a life cycle person's whole time. And it will eventually probably work. But it's going to take you like 8 to 10 weeks to run that. They're going to build all of those. The only thing they're going to be doing.
Yeah.
And for the equivalent of a like 5 to 10% improvement in that program, it is not worth like 3/4 of your quarter to have them like optimize the click-through rate on one of your onboarding emails by 10%. So like, I just got very used to like, not saying no to that idea, but being like, that's great, but do you think that introducing the free trial might be better? Whereas it is now possible to be like, well, yeah, but like we could run a test for 10 different groups, 10 different ways. Like it'll just write the email it'll just run it for us. Why wouldn't we just do it? I'm like, oh, like that, it's totally worth it. It's just like, it used to not be worth the labor. And now that the time to like rice scoring is like reach, impact, confidence, and ease. The ease level used to be gigantic on one of these like hyper-personalization tests. And so I was like, it's not easy. It's so much effort. We're not going to do it.
Yeah.
But now that effort is so small, I'm like, sure, it's a 10% gain in click-through rate from speaking to their specific industry needs in their onboarding email, but it runs just as fast as any other test. It takes, 3 weeks to get to stat sig. It takes a week to build it. That's a month. And it runs on its own because the platform handles it. So my lifecycle marketer can go do something else. That now becomes a test worth running. So it unlocks like all these like hyper specific sort of like subcategorization within the schemes that I think like 5 or 6 years ago, I would have been like, you are like wasting your time thinking about that. And now I'm like, oh yeah, just, I don't know, run it, like figure it out.
Yeah.
Cause it's like so easy. What used to be over testing the emails is now like just a reasonable amount of testing the emails. And again, like no amount of like copy changes is going to outweigh like making big, meaningful changes in your life cycle. I think of it as like what you're selling and who you're selling it to is the most important. Is it something they want? Are they in the mood to buy it? Then the timing, then the experience. Do they click? Do they go straight there? Can they buy it? And lastly, like what the email says is like the very tip of the iceberg. So normally it's like you want to like make sure you're testing the things lower in the pyramid as often as you can. But it used to be, I would just like kind of ignore the top of the pyramid entirely. I'd be like, oh, the email, it says the thing, like go do something else. But now I'm like, I don't know, like make it work. And I have been surprised. We have the time. There was at Crunchbase, we did a big pricing and packaging overhaul, and we introduced a new middle tier expensive SKU. And we expected to make a certain amount of dollars just because it like had features we knew people wanted. And on average, like we assumed some people would buy it instead of the bottom level SKU. And we tested into just our evergreen checkout flow, and the revenue was flat, which was mind boggling. I had like no idea how this was happening. And we tried a couple different cuts with the help of product and engineering. They had to move on. And I was like, just let me like code the page so my team can test it and let us go for it. And so I had like a lifecycle / website marketer just work on the page. And our second test was we just like reformatted it and re-explained it and highlighted the new plan. And it like made all the money we thought it was supposed to make instantly. And it's like the whole, like if a tree falls in a forest and no one can hear it, like if you do something, but people don't understand it, you might as well have not done it. So the messaging is important. Yeah. But it's just like, you often don't have the time to test it. So now that I have the time to test it, there might actually be another one of those, like, we think we've been delivering value, but people haven't understood it. And if I just tested it for like 8 weeks and it didn't cost me really that much time to do so, there might be like huge wins hiding in there, which is just new for me as a lifecycle marketer. So in the 2010s, I would be like, anyone who's telling you they're going to subject line test their way to success is super dumb. And now it's like, could be right.
No, this is crazy because it's basically AI being your intern. And so what felt like an intern project where you're like, yeah, you're just getting there. It's like, now you get it for free. So might as well do it. Why would you, second guess that? Cool. Well, on that note, maybe a little bit more about AI. So like any marketing that's just getting started, or even beyond marketing, if you're seeing some use cases for AI, whether it's in the product space or I don't know, Handshake as a company, what are some use cases that are making more and more sense?
I think it still has to be focused down to like, if you're using AI to just change the words and it's not changing the meaning, you're offering something different or you're being more specific or change the timing, it's still like, it's going to give you wins, but it's not that useful. Whereas, for example, a Handshake, when you are an employer trying to hire a student, depending on the industry you're in, you hire in very different times of the year. And that is like a key insight. So one of the ways that we've been using all kinds of AI is our product marketer will do some research and sort of identify that depending on the industry, you hire at very different times of year. They might go and use ChatGPT to quickly do a bunch of research that would have taken them a couple days to do. That's basically like, depending on the industry, when do they hire and how do they hire? And then that training document we pair with the sales enablement plays that our sales enablement marketers say. For healthcare, say this. For technology, say this. We take both of those and then we hand those to like JustWords or any other AI tool. And we're like, I want you to segment by industry. And if you write an email for this person, I want you to reference these two documents to know why it matters that you are saying this. And it takes a little while because like, I don't think the robot always gets like really what I'm asking for. So it takes a couple rounds, but like, if you can come up with a different reason to speak to that person and the bot can do that, that is very powerful. Whereas if it's just like changing the words, I'm like, it's a 5% game, but it's not worth my time. So it's been, I think that's why like JustWords, for example, was really interesting to us, is it wasn't just a generator of email options. It allows you to plug into, in this case, we use Iterable as our Lifecycle platform. It allows you to plug into the data in Iterable and then segment the emails by the different fields. And putting the two of those together now actually gives us a like structural difference in the emails. Whereas if it was just like, oh, we'll sell you a tool that writes your emails, we're like, I can copy paste out of ChatGPT. I don't necessarily need that. But it's the combination of the context from Iterable and the ability to write the emails that unlocks truly a difference in the onboarding email by industry, for example.
Suddenly that makes sense, because when people talk about send time optimizations and do it like on a Monday versus Tuesday, that sometimes feels flat. It's like, okay, sure. But now if you put context and say, no, like, I don't know, Mondays are when students are coming to school after the weekend, right? Like then there's value in showing a different message. So it makes sense.
I've told you this story before, but we like at an old company back before AI existed, you could like, you'd have to do your own sort of like machine learning and like data modeling. And we did this big segmentation exercise at Dropbox to try to find new groups of people to upsell. And our number one, most successful one was our big paywall, which is you run in a storage space. And the data science team went off and like did this like couple month project, analyzed everything, came back and they were like, here's your top 10% most likely to buy. And I was like, great, cool. And ran it, like compared it to the like people who had hit the paywall. And I was like, it was like 90% overlap. And I was like, you're telling me that you use the data model to tell me that people who hit the paywall are most likely to buy? Like, thank you. And they were like, okay, like give us another chance. And I gave them some feedback. I was like, I need to know who they are, but I also need to know why. Because I need a reason to email them. It's like we were talking about the lead gen programs. It wasn't just emailing the people who had 5 people on their employer account. It was emailing them about that. So they went back and they looked and they found instead that there was this other group of people that was the second most likely to buy and very similar because they were sharing a lot. And we're like, that's an insight. And then we did some like PMM research on why people who are sharing might buy. We did some other engagement programs to make people share more and make that pool bigger. And then we made a monetization program of the people who are sharing with the sharing features, and it started to work. And that I think also applies forward to AI, where it's like, I could use AI to tell me the people most likely to buy. It doesn't tell me anything. It's email. I can email everybody. I need to know why. And that either finding out insights into why someone is most likely to buy, or knowing that myself of being able to tailor the email to trigger off of that is the difference. If I don't have something new to work off of, it doesn't necessarily drive any business value.
Yeah, that's also a really strong example of like, don't just change words, but add the why back into the content, and then it starts to make more sense.
Yes, exactly.
Awesome. So many good insights. Good segue into our rapid fire round. So,
great.
So this is just your hot takes and predictions, no right or wrong answers. But I completely appreciate as many hot takes as you have.
Oh boy.
All right. Are you ready?
Yes, fire away.
Okay. Instagram or Twitter/X?
Instagram? I don't mind Instagram.
Are you a TikTok person?
I had TikTok for like 2 hours and I immediately deleted it. It sucked my brain in so hard. I was like, Instagram is already fine at this. TikTok is another level. I deleted it immediately.
Favorite AI tool right now? Doesn't have to be in the
Ooh.
marketing
You,
space.
you mean besides just words?
Besides, and
I
besides GPT.
Fair enough. I have been on a tear with the. Have you heard of Hex, the analytics platform?
Yeah.
Fantastic, cool on its own without AI. It has this little like in beta like AI robot that essentially like if especially if you know your data sources and you just need it to like join things together and pull graphs for you. It's incredible. I can reference like dashboards not by like an ID, but just by their name or who made them. Be like, can you go find the data behind this dashboard and join it with this dashboard and tell them the people that were uploaded and how many signed up before August? And it's like, yeah, here you go. And I'm like, can I check the SQL behind it? Like, sure. I'm like, this is crazy. So anyway, I've like the
I
Hex
gotta check
bot.
this one out. Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
the Hex bot. It's
Okay.
fantastic.
Okay. Yeah. And I'll let my team know as well. Awesome. Well, on the flip side, the most overrated buzzword in AI marketing right now.
ChatGPT to me is a really, really good model, but it is relatively useless because by the time I am done typing in the context it needs into the box, like I've written the thing I need to write. Like dumber models that are connected to my stuff are far more valuable than than the latest model that can like pass the bar. I'm like, I'm so glad it can pass the bar, but I'm not a law firm. And if I have to explain like our trial to purchase conversion to this thing one more time, I'm gonna lose my mind. So I don't know. Untethered genius chatbots are not for me.
I love that hot take. That is such a good hot take. That's a really good one.
Thanks.
And it makes total sense. Like you can give me the smartest model who can go on the board with that. And it's like, what do I do with it? It's not connected to my life.
Yeah, like great. It's just like a smart friend who like doesn't really pay attention to me. I'm like, I have plenty of those. I don't need that.
Yeah, I love that. Awesome. Well, on a similar note, do you think AI follows strategy or AI can take over strategy over time?
I think AI could help with brainstorming. I don't think so for now. I'm sure that as these things get plugged into tons and tons of things and get more context, but for now, no, I don't. I wouldn't use a GPT to do my planning.
Well, that's how I know you're an A+ critical thinker.
Thank you. Well, or I just say that.
All right, the last one. One growth leader or a blog or Substack that you think everybody should be following right now.
Ezra Klein is very smart. And if you just look on Spotify for attention, he has several interviews with various interesting people. My favorite is, her name is Kyla Scanlon. She's like a 27, 28-year-old like reporter who talks a lot about the economy, but also has some thoughts on like the attention economy and is sort of like in the forefront of reporting on that and how like AI startups now like are like making meme videos to get like $200 million rounds. Like, so it's super interesting. So it's maybe not marketing, but it's like, it is what we are quote unquote up against as marketers.
Yeah. No, yeah, absolutely. Love it. So many good insights. Well, Nick, thank you so much for joining us today. If you found something useful today, share this episode with your team and feel free to subscribe to Just AI to just understand how real lifecycle teams are adopting AI.